Welcome to our new episode of the Water Talks podcast, where water stories, science, and application receive the focus they deserve. I am host, although not for long, today, Els Vanbeckevoort, and delighted to be joined by my co-host. Hey, Scott, how are you doing?
I'm well, Els. It seems like forever since we've done a podcast. I miss a couple traveling heavily.
For sure. How was your summer?
Excellent. I had such a good time. I got some traveling, got some home time. I live in Grand Bend, Ontario, which is
Gorgeous.
beach heaven, and I work out on the beach when I'm home. I love it.
That's
So it's
beautiful.
been good.
Nice. Yeah. For us too, busy
Very
work
fortunate.
summer, but some holidays, like I say, those Great Lakes sure are beautiful. So that was a real pleasure for me too.
Always appreciate where we live.
That's for sure.
All right, today I get to take over the mic, and we're going to switch roles here, and I'm going to actually interview our interviewer. So today I'm going to host and actually interview Els, and so we're going to provide some questions for her, learn a little bit about her background, and see what brought her here today with her business and her life. So welcome, Els, to our program.
Thanks, Scott. It's exciting. It's so fun. It's kind of a little strange to be on the other side, you know. I like asking questions, so it's cool. Thank you. Nice to be here.
So let's get right to it, Els. And I and known you for I think about 10 years now, and I'm writing some questions to ask you. And some of these I don't have a clue what the answer is. So hopefully for everyone they're beneficial, and people get a better perspective on Els, the person we know. So first one is really, where did you start out? So let me know about a bit. Where did your life start?
Sure.
Ultimately ended up and here as a scientist.
Nice.
And
yeah.
as a business owner.
Thank you. Well, I was born in Belgium and in a very large family. I'm still, like, my whole family's still there. So I grew up there. Being born in Belgium was interesting in that it's a small country and resources are a little more scarce. I grew up knowing that sometimes water was scarce, like some summers we were kind of limited on water use because it was hot or things like that. So, and I lived and studied in Belgium and Europe, I guess, for the first number of years of my life. My background was business, so after high school I kind of took classical high school education in Europe. That's still a thing. Studied Latin and Greek, which is kind of strange, but that's how it goes. And then ended up going for business for the first number of years of my career. And then after studying, also ended up actually doing some teaching at some universities where mostly I was working on the kind of the business language side of things, and then ended up working for one of the companies that I was teaching in business development. And so that was kind of my first venture into serious business development, leadership, management roles. And that was also where I started my water journey. Like, this company was based in the United Kingdom, and they were looking for someone to start engaging some of their clients who were all the main water companies actually in Europe. And so they're looking for someone who could speak French, who also had a business background, and who would be comfortable taking on a fairly scientific role. So it was kind of interesting because, though, like I say, I had some high school, university level chemistry. I was very interested in science actually, but that wasn't my main focus. And even post secondary in my university studies, it was always business. And so it was interesting to have that focus on chemistry early on in my career, and having a chance to really do a deep dive and see how interesting and valuable it was. It really required me to take it further to the next level. And so as I was working, with some of those clients who were the Evians of this world, the Danones of this world, the Perriers of this world, it also gave me an appreciation, I guess, the value of water. Though I grew up with, bottled water coming in from somebody who would deliver like a crate of 24 bottles of water every year to start with. And then, you'd empty the glass empties would just go back, and you do that every week. It really helped me to appreciate how precious water was, I guess. So those were kind of, in my mid-20s, my first major job was really, understanding water isn't just water. It's not just something that came out of the ground, but something that had tremendous value, and also was complex and difficult to manage, to treat, to transport. And I think that was kind of an early inspirational step for me because it made me understand that, okay, it really doesn't make sense to put water in plastic and ship it halfway across the world. And so that's kind of where my science and water awakening began. And then subsequently, really in my career after that, everything I did subsequent was kind of research and development based. Having surrounded myself also, I guess, as I grew in seniority or leadership, or even as an entrepreneur, surrounding myself with people who are experts in their field, it became more of a passion for me. So though business was my foundation, science became my passion. And I think later on, as I moved to Canada in 2006 and call myself a very proud Canadian now, though those European experiences were very helpful. It also, helped me to appreciate the value of water, living here in this beautiful country and kind of making it my own. It was wonderful to have that opportunity to bring that passion, that vision, that, healthy water or the health of water or the water as the great enabler, that it can really make valuable contributions in people's lives in very practical ways, not just from a drinking perspective, obviously, but also in the application of aquatics and swimming pools. I love to swim. Having inherited a swimming pool in the home that I moved into when I moved to Canada in 2006, it was like, okay, how do I make this water healthy, right? Because I have chlorine allergies, and chlorine allergies, what that means, kind of disinfection byproduct allergies and those kinds of things. So for me, that was an impetus there. And so with my, co-founder, this vision that, okay, we can really try and make a positive contribution, that healthy water can change the world, that there's an upside to this that has tremendous value. That's kind of where the vision for SanEcoTec began. And maybe I'll pause it there, or I can go a little further if you like, but that's kind of the backstory to the beginning of SanEcoTec. And then we can maybe develop a little bit more from there.
Hey, so first of all, I feel your passion for water, and I don't think anybody ever really realizes how fortunate we are where we live. I always say we
Oh,
live in
for sure.
water, and though not only that we have lots of it, but the water quality is exceptional generally. So the water that comes to our tap, we don't have to think about drinking on a daily basis. However, when we get to the pool, it's so misunderstood, and that's really our passion that brought us together in discussion and has held our relationship and our discussions over the years. So I love that
Yes.
background because you've obviously made both your background that you started in business, and that's a practical application, and then taken it and really learned your new business. It was really interesting, your journey, because I still remember I was at a large pool conference probably 12 years ago, and the
Yes.
speaker said, who started their life career working around swimming pools? And of 500 people, probably 50 put up their hand. The rest all
Really? Yeah.
great there over time for different reasons. And I always found that fascinating because so many people have such a passion for what we do, and but they didn't
Yes.
start there, myself included. So it
No,
really cool.
exactly.
So that was the
Exactly.
beginning of SanEcoTec over here in Canada. You started. Can you, one, tell us what you mean by that logo and some of the drivers that really started off here?
Yeah. 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 No, that's a good question. And it's changed a little bit over time. Like I say, we started with a vision that healthy water can change the world, but the world is a big place. And I know it's kind of a global thing, but they talk about kind of thinking globally, but acting locally. And so the practical way that we kind of translate that, I guess, is that, the water is crucial for a sustainable future. That's true for all of us. But we think that if we embrace healthy water practices, we contribute to safeguarding, our communities, the environment, and we can do this in a sustainable way. So when we talk about sustainable growth, I mean, it's a word that's thrown around a lot today, and I don't want to make light of it because it really matters greatly that, we try and leave things better for the generations that follow after us. And the cool thing about working in water is that we can do certain practices, we can adopt certain practices that actually help us to reduce waste, reduce risk, but also save money. And so growth in and of itself is not the goal or the focus. But what we try and do is help our clients to do so, at least from a water systems perspective, in a sustainable way. And so, by using, in terms of emission, we recommend, we try and work with clients to adopt some digital solutions, right? To kind of move in a more digital way rather than using paper, which is fine. It's okay to write things down. I still do. But, if you can use the innovation pieces from some of the digital solutions that are there, then you can adopt more sustainable water management practices. And the outcomes really is what we want to talk about today, is that, you can reduce risk, cost, and waste. And so that's kind of the focus for us has been, how do we take all of this water science and technology, this learning, how do we make this into some practical things that people can do, so that, okay, you want to have as many, for a municipal pool, and actually even for, a swim school, or any of our clients that are in large commercial applications or municipal applications, you want to run as much programming as you possibly can. Okay, so you want to be busy from morning till night. So what we envisage is that, okay, if you can take some tangible steps, not all at once, you can actually facilitate, a pool that's accessible for the majority of the day with minimal downtime, with the best possible outcomes, where people who go there can have a really positive experience. And so growth in that way can happen sustainably. Does that make sense? I'm trying to, break it down.
In my perspective, is one, healthy, safe water, and not only the water, but the environment you
Yes,
breathe in, within a swimming complex, and then doing it in a sustainable way. So not only we're providing the immediate response to make your experience better, we'll call it, but down the road for our grandkids, that we're leaving them something that's valuable and reducing our waste. And because there's a lot of downstream costing to water that is
exactly.
never understood.
Yeah. No, I
What do
agree.
you, how do you see that, Els? Like the downstream, explaining that to people? How do you provide that? Do you do it as a cost?
Well, we look at ways in which we can tangibly use data to measure it, right? So, like, it's one thing to come up with a big statement that says, okay, we're wasting money, we're wasting resources, but it's good really to start from a position of, okay, doing a benchmark and understanding, okay, what is actually going on within your system. So, like, you can do everything all at once. And we start in small but tangible ways. We talk about this as the audit phase, or kind of a risk assessment, which is a holistic approach looking at, okay, what's your infrastructure? What's the current water that's coming into your facility? What are the operational people that you have that can work this facility? What water treatment tools, systems, equipment do you have? How is the pool used? Like, there's a whole range of different things that we kind of look at when we do that initial audit. But really, once we have, and we do some analysis. So water chemistry, as you know, is a big part of my passion, but it's so helpful. It's like you go to the doctor every year, and you get a blood analysis done, right? So they, like, if you don't get your blood work looked at, or any diagnostics at all, then it's really hard. I mean, I guess when you're sick, it's obvious and the doctor can see you're sick. But, a lot of preventative screening that happens in the medical sense is to avoid problems from becoming a serious problem. And so we look at it a little bit, in a similar way, to say, okay, we're going to do, a chemistry analysis. We're going to look at some different things that they don't, operators don't have to look at. And that's fine from a regulatory perspective. But if you don't do that health check, you don't do that initial baseline, it's hard to know, what's truly going on within that system, because the water chemistry doesn't lie. Okay. I know it's a snapshot, but some things are not snapshots. For example, disinfection byproducts build up over time. So it's not like, okay, today there's disinfection byproducts, tomorrow there's none. It doesn't really work like that. Or turbidity is not something that comes from one day to the next. It's actually something that is a good indicator of what's going on generally within that whole infrastructure. Air quality, like just walking on deck. I mean, this, walking on deck, if you can smell it, we've had some very really knowledgeable, respected guests who've talked about this, who say, like, if you can smell the pool, it's all wrong already because you shouldn't be smelling it. And so but we try and do this in an objective way, right? So we try and kind of start there to say, hey, how are you doing? You don't know what you don't know. So let's kind of do this yearly medical, okay, this medical, and see where you stack up. And the only way is up. I always tell everybody the only way is up. So it doesn't matter if you start low, like the only way is up, and it's only going to get better.
Excellence over compliance is really what you're saying. And I'm just going to ask you this. So you're now working in Canada and living in Canada, and you're dealing with the Canadian philosophy, which I always say that Europe's many years ahead of us in their thinking with aquatic systems. So we have some common thinking on that. Can you talk about some of the good things and some of the challenges of making this kind of change?
Yes. I think that we have met many wonderful people. You're one of them years ago who share this common vision that we can do this better. So I think there's a lot of goodwill around where people are understanding that the status quo isn't necessarily the best that we can do. At the same time, pools have lots of challenges to contend with in terms of staff, operators, people that they have to train, a million other responsibilities that they have to look after. So, I think a lot of people that we meet and work with are kind of also constrained by how much focus can we give this? Like, how much is it, how difficult is this going to be? Is this going to, be much more difficult for us to manage? And so I think being mindful of both of those things, one being that generally speaking, everybody agrees that if there's a way that they can do this better, they want to know about it. But on the other hand, there's the constraints of, okay, we have compliance to look after, which is the regulatory requirement. And then we have all of those other responsibilities and staffing and operational and training issues that we have to contend with. So I think those are two things that I would kind of, juxtapose and say they both exist at the same time. I also could see that regulatory compliance sometimes is what people understand to be health, healthy water, healthy pool, the best practice. And of course, as a trainer, that that's not the case, because that's kind of the minimum that we have to achieve. And so you just said it before, excellence over compliance is getting that mindset for people to understand that, okay, compliance doesn't mean that you've arrived. And in fact, there's a significant gap between compliance and what we call an optimized pool, an optimal pool. And so helping to bridge that gap is also really important. So we're in this together because we know a piece of that is education. A piece of that is knowledge, okay, good data, and doing some excellent baseline testing and being able to allow the data to speak for itself. And the third piece, I think, is also an understanding that, hey, there's actually a tremendous future benefit that's economic as well as operationally going to make my life a lot easier. And then, I don't know if any of our listeners listened to last month's podcast, and I know Scott has met with many people, but once you are running a more optimal best practice pool, it generally means a lot less hassle, a lot less putting out fires, and a lot less problems, and a lot less downtime, and all of those good things that you really want. But, that gap is sometimes a bit of a challenge. And so we're working together, obviously, to try and bridge that gap as efficiently as we can, appreciating and understanding that everybody's starting in a different place.
So people become much more proactive rather than reactive, right? You're not going, oh my gosh, we have to close the pool today because the clarity or we've had complaints or whatever. You're starting to say, this is going to happen because this is coming. So
exactly. Yeah.
Good data, right? You keep saying that. And I always say you can either use a desk phone or an iPhone. So which one would you rather use?
Yes. Or kind of sending a smoke signal or.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we're not that far back, but it's still there. It's just the idea of compliance really is a challenge for all of us as we try to move the needle forward. So I'm going to just ask you, what do you think are major inhibitors to moving the needle for better trained operators and chemically correct pools here? Where we are today, as some of the philosophies used in the European systems. So how do we bring that here?
Yeah.
Where do we bring it forward?
Well, I think that there needs to be a shift, a paradigm shift, I think, also at the regulatory level. I think that, regulators, it's not easy in the first place. I totally understand that. But getting some harmonization between the different jurisdictions, getting the communication channels open. I know there's more connection with our friends in the South, at least on the Model Aquatic Health Code. I think that's a really great effort. So there's the regulatory barrier. I think if we had stricter regulations, and I don't mean strict in the sense of, okay, here's just throw more chlorine at it, because that's kind of a catch-all, and I understand why that happens. But looking at things more holistically from a systems perspective requires, the regulatory bodies to potentially then look to other jurisdictions and understand that, okay, we're not just trying to focus on, and this is critically important to make sure people don't get sick when they go into a pool, but there are more aspects here that we're missing. And I think that that's really important, because the waste component and the regulatory component, they go hand in hand, right? So the reason some of our colleagues in the Netherlands, they run what we call a net zero pool, is because of those very strict regulations. The strict regulations force them to have really disciplined approaches, have highly specific, accurate and precise control strategies, have equipment that meets all of those criteria. Also, from an energy management perspective, they have significantly tighter regulations. What they're allowed to waste is significantly tighter. So I think that's one barrier. I think the other barrier is indeed, as you mentioned already, I think is education and having enough staff members and team members. CPO, I think, is a great start, but it's not enough. Like doing CPO training by regulation, I think it's every 3 years, is it, Scott? I think you said
5.
for 5. I mean, so that's not enough, right? So having the capacity to access more information, have those digital tools as well to actually shorten that learning cycle and shorten that the application of that. So I think that's another piece of the puzzle. And then the other barrier, I would say, is that practice makes permanent, where some people think that if it ain't broke, don't need to fix it. We've done what we've always done, and there's no need to innovate. There's no need to do anything else, because if we do this, then we're just going to create more problems for ourselves. And I think that's kind of those are the three things. If we were able to overcome each of those, I think this whole process could expedite rapidly, because people would see, okay, regulation needs to be outcome based rather than prescriptive, to say, okay, you have to use, I think the new regulations for the higher chlorine concentrations are completely at odds with what the rest of the world is doing. Like I say, I understand why. I know they're doing it because they want to make it more safe, or have this other, fail safe mode where more is better. And if people, don't have some of the other things in place, then that's okay. But, that's at odds with what's happening in the US. It's at odds what's happening in the rest of the European Union. So I think, that harmonization will be very helpful to look at it more broadly. And then overcoming the other two aspects in terms of training, more frequent training, and making it readily available to people so that it's not, so onerous and difficult. And then thirdly, overcoming the mindset that it ain't fixed. Don't, if it ain't broken, don't fix it.
What you're talking about sounds like work. I don't want to go there, and we have to get by that and say I ultimately it will make things life easier, because it will be running correctly, right? It's like doing oil
Absolutely.
changing. It's preventative maintenance, and it just becomes part of the role of the facility,
Right.
not even a person. So I agree with you
Yeah.
100%. And yeah, it is kind of, CPO is required every 5 years, and I
Right.
constantly get people who say, "Well, I took it once, I'm good," and I go, "Well, I've never had anybody complain after doing a review in 5 years, and nobody's ever walked out and said I already knew this." They all go, "Oh, I forgot this." So to your point, more keeping people updated has a great value, and then go beyond that compliance and say, "Okay, now where can we go with this base knowledge?" Because you can't just
Exactly.
one and done. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
All right, so
I think so.
I'm going to give you a list of questions. These are short answer, else. Not short
I'll
answer,
try.
not okay. So I'm calling them the mad science question, because You have stated to me that you've become a science geek and you love the lab more than anything else. I'll just say that. So, quick answers. Most misunderstood issue with pools.
pH. Is that short enough for you? No, no. I mean, yeah. Most important parameter, most misunderstood, most measured. There you go.
There you go. Excellent. All right. Most overrated theory of pools operations.
Shocking the pool to contend with your monodiene trichloramines. It's the most nonsensical exercise. If you have a fouling, I completely am with it. It's very helpful. Advising this to deal with your combined chlorine is just yeah, that's got to go. It's not a good choice. There are much better ways to deal with that.
Okay. It's shocking that people are shocking.
It
There you
is.
go.
It is because you're dealing with a small little problem. Oh well, it's a big problem. You're dealing with it for one day, but you're creating a mountain of other problems in the meantime. So I know you know. Anyway.
Okay. Strangest discussion you ever had at a facility with an operator or a team.
Strangest discussion. Oh my gosh, there's been a few.
Names.
Well, I won't name names, but I guess when you're trying to demonstrate, and this is a longer answer, sorry, strange discussion is usually about measurement practices that are permanent, where people are used to doing a certain thing. And even though you've explained and showed them that how they're measuring is not giving them reliable data, they insist that their personal subjective interpretation of the data is still more reliable than giving them an objective way to take a measurement. And that's kind of like, that's a really strange conversation to have, because at that point, you're no longer at the rational or the objective, you're at the irrational. And you can't even argue with that, because that's just saying, I like blue and you like green, and I'm going to keep wearing blue. And it's like, where do you go? It's a little difficult.
Showing science, it's hard to
Yeah.
connect.
Yeah. So
Next question. What is your favorite work moment over the past 5 years?
I have a few, but my favorite work moment is where, I mean, you said I love the lab the most, but actually I love being in the field the most, doing lab things. So where I can go to visit a client where, their baseline was one thing, and that magical moment where that's no longer their baseline is now something really like so much better, and it hasn't taken really not a mountain of effort. It's actually, they've just consistently done some of those small but tangible steps. And to see how excited the operators get, how excited people are with how their pool water now smells, looks, feels, and the compliments they get from the guests. To me, that's why I get up in the morning. Like, that makes me like super happy, because I know, they've done it. I've been just helping a little bit, facilitating, but they've done it and they can see it and they get it. And it's like, okay, I love this. I live for that. So there's been many, many of those over the last 5 years. So that's like, it's like the best feeling ever.
Excellent. Excellent. So do you have best advice you would give to a pool owner?
Yes. First thing, be open-minded, I think. Be open-minded. Don't think that, like, none of us know it all, right? Like, I am the product of, the wise counsel of people who've been around me for many, many years. Like, SanEcoTec's been around since, 2010, kind of in practical ways. And, we've solved some big problems, but like I say, I use the we, that includes, like, we work in partnerships with lots of very, very talented, wise, and clever people who also have the same aptitude. Okay, we're open. We're just going to see where the data takes us, where the science takes us, where the application takes us. So, be open. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is, just take the first step. Like, don't be afraid to wade in. You don't have to dive right in, to use our pool analogy. You don't have to go right down in the diving tank and go from the top slide. You can just wade into the kiddie pool, or just put your toe in, start there. But but it's gonna have a benefit, and you're gonna be able to measure it and see it. And so, like those two things together, it's all you need.
Excellent. Excellent. Where do you see SanEcoTec in the next 5 years?
Well, it's always a difficult question. I think I have to, as a business leader, think in 5-year plans or long-term strategy. But I see between now and 5 years, I see many, many, many clients that we are bringing to that place of, running a more optimal pool and running a more optimal operation. Like we don't just work in pools, we do some work in hospitals, and we do some work in horticulture. We do some work in drinking water systems, but large focus of our efforts is in pools. And I think for me, it's like, okay, we have many clients now, but in 5 years, let's say that we have a completely rejuvenated aquatics industry in our province, in our country. I think Canada can be a leader. I know that, okay, Europe, yes, the regulations are forcing people to go that way, but I also happen to believe that we as Canadians uh, are innovative, we're hardworking, we're focused, we have so much going for us. And I think, we'd like to be a part of that small but tangible revolution. I can use that word, sorry, in aquatics, where, rather than, I think the regulatory bodies are kind of following suit as well, but that in 5 years' time, the new standard, the new best practice is not going to be minimum compliance. It's going to be that, okay, everybody runs their pool to a higher standard, is saving money, having better outcomes, is getting the support for the operators that they need, so that this essential community service, which really it is, can really be perpetuated even in the midst of economic downturns, even in the midst of some of the challenging economic conditions that we find ourselves in, so that, you know, yeah, we can be a part of that, that gentle but hopefully compelling move towards that significant increase in adoption of that higher standard, what we call water health, right? We talk about water health as not just safety from a microbiological perspective, like we've talked about it in multiple podcasts, but I think it bears saying again, making sure that it's aesthetically pleasing, but also that it's healthy, that there's no toxins in the water or in the air, and that we're doing so in the most sustainable way, so that we're reducing water, energy, and chemical waste, and ultimately, have just a much more pleasant environment for everybody to work in. I think in 5 years also, automation, to me, that's my hope, is that automation can become a big thing, so that we can have the lifeguards focus on saving lives, and they don't necessarily have to go and do grab samples anymore, and they don't have to do that kind of testing. So we can get some automation in there with reliable tools that enable us to really be actually keeping the pool safe in a much more focused way than having to do the grab samples. I'm not suggesting we shouldn't ever validate in the pool what's going on in the mechanical room, but having some of those automation things in there, I think, will be really helpful, and also will free up our operators to do the things that they need to do as well, so that, we can have a online chemistry analysis that basically does a lot for us, and so that the operator can maintain the system, and the recreational staff can be busy with programming and saving lives. That's my vision.
That's a good short answer, Elsa.
I'm sorry. I tried with the early ones.
So I guess while you're saying this, I'm going, we have cars that drive by themselves down highways, and yet we're still hand bombing samples because we don't trust our controller. And that kind of mentality, right? The technology is here. You have to first of all learn to do it, and then let it do its job.
Exactly.
And
Yeah,
away we go. So that's
exactly.
excellent. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, it was a little long.
That's okay. I know. You're very passionate about your work and your life. So that's excellent. Before I switch here, can you explain what SanEcoTec, where that came from, real quick?
The name?
Real quick. Yeah.
Well, standing for healthy, in French, anyways, eco for ecological, and then tech for technologies. So it was kind of I don't know, a made up word, but it was meant to embody what we stood for, I guess. So, that's kind of where it
It
comes
does
from.
to me. That's how I would, if I had to explain it, that's how I would. I just want to make sure it
Yes.
meets It's not my company, it's yours. So
Yeah. Thank you,
that's
Scott.
awesome. We're having our annual Better Pools workshop next
Yeah.
month,
Yes, sir.
and it's very exciting. This is our fifth year, we believe.
We are counting. Yes, it's like really. It's that little thing called COVID in the middle. So
Last year we sold out, which I was very impressed, and the response from the participants was excellent.
yes,
What's your perspective on what we're heading for this year? And
we're very graciously being hosted one more time by the town of Oakville and at a different facility now where they also have implemented some of those, what we call, pool process optimization steps. So like, it's important, I think, to tie the theory with the practical so that people can get a good feel for both because yes, there's learning, but there's also application. And I think both have to go hand in hand, which is why I think we started out calling it, the Better Pools Workshop. So this year, the room is slightly larger. So we hope we can actually, make sure that everybody who wants to come can come. It should be an interesting day. Like the focus in the morning is going to be on what we call, how do we optimize pool systems? How do we make them as great as excellent as possible. And, we'll be touching on both operational and infrastructure possibilities, looking at, okay, how do we reduce waste? What are some of the best practices? Like it's going to be theory based and, looking at kind of the foundational scientific as well as technical principles in the morning. And then the afternoon will include actually a session by the town of Oakville operational staff about the facility that we're being hosted at, so that people can look at the case study because it's useful to then look at the theory and then say, okay, how do we actually put this into practice, right? And some facilities are very old, some of them are newish or looking to build a new facility. So I think there'll be something there for everybody. And then the afternoon, we're hoping to have 3 workshops. 2 of them are open to everybody. The third one has some sign up criteria as well. They'll be actually in the program so people can go and have a look. Tomorrow, I believe that tickets will be available through Eventbrite. It'll have kind of the more full program on there as well. But obviously, if people have questions, they can reach out to you, Scott, or to us. And we can give some more information. But hopefully, yeah, it's going to be a great day again for everybody. And we'll provide the wonderful catering as they did last year. I think it's the same group of people are going to look after us from that perspective. That was quite well received as well. So looking forward
well,
to it.
it's really taking your knowledge to another level. That's what when I walk away from our conference every year, I say, we've moved beyond the baseline and trying to
Exactly.
help people understand their pools more thoroughly. But whether you're uh, supervisor, manager, or director, or even owner. We had some owners last year up front, and we had public health, and we had like such a nice
Yeah,
mix
mix. I know.
to make it. The questions are different. The learning is different because of where your focus is within your job or your perspective or your business. So
Exactly. Exactly.
it's awesome, and I'm really glad that we have the opportunity to do it because it's rare in our business anywhere to have this opportunity.
Yeah.
So
And it's very much focused, right, on kind of the pool systems. I know there are lots of great conferences actually, and I've enjoyed attending many of them, but we're trying to make this very specific for continuous learning, right? So that people indeed, like you say, can get to that higher level of understanding and knowledge and hopefully come away with something practical and useful for everybody for sure. So yeah, I'm excited. Can't wait.
excellent. All right. I'm going to hand it back over to you to do our
Yeah. Thanks,
cut
Scott.
down, and we will look forward to seeing you again next month on our podcast and have more great discussions. Thank you very much. You're an amazing, amazing participant in our talk today.
You had good questions and
It flows through the screen, your passion for what you do, and it's appreciated, I'm sure, with everybody you work with.
yeah, I really love it. And I love our collaboration and, the work that we do together. I mean, it takes a team, right? It takes all of us working together. Yes, I'm passionate, but, without all of those people in the different, spheres that we work with, we wouldn't be able to do it. So I'm very grateful also for you. Thank you for your wonderful questions and also to our guest, our audience, for joining us today. You can listen to this episode again, if you'd like, by subscribing to our YouTube channel, as well as connecting with us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you have questions about this episode, or you have some ideas on future topics, or you'd like to be a guest, Scott and I would love to hear from you. And so please email us at mywatertalks@SanEcoTec.com. We really look forward to seeing you potentially at the Better Pools Conference on October 29th at Queen Elizabeth Park Community Center in Oakville. We look forward to either seeing you there or catching you on our next podcast from Scott and I. Thank you all so much, and have an excellent rest of your day.